Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport. We have a lot of motorsport to cover in today's video. World Endurance with the 6 hours of Imola, World Rally Championship from Croatia, IndyCar and IMSA from Long Beach, NASCAR from Talladega, TCR World Tour and Europe from Vallelunga, Supercars from Taupo, Eurocup Free from Spa, and Brazilian Stock Car from Sao Paulo. We have already talked about the Formula 1, so if you want to first watch a video about the Chinese Grand Prix, you should do that and subscribe to the channel whilst you are at it. And with that, let's jump into this look at last weekend's motorsport action. World Endurance was back with round 2, the 6 hours of Imola, and we got a whole bunch of drama right at the start. As the 3 Ferraris led the field, carnage behind saw both Alpines, a BMW and a Peugeot, all make contact, and a full course yellow to start us off. Iron Dames ran into issues, as did the other Peugeot, in what was a difficult start to the race for a number of cars. It was Ferrari, Toyota and Porsche battling it out at the front of the field, always seemingly within 20 seconds of each other. Fierce competition in the World Endurance, but the number 8 Toyota, the car that has dominated this series for so long, was again further back and not in the fight for the win. The Jota Porsche has been very impressive in Qatar, but Callum Ilott crashed and then radioed the team to let them know of impending mechanical issues. He survived, but with 2.5 hours left, the rain started to come down just to complicate matters further. Carl Bennett in the Isotta Fraschini crashed and gave the strategists a potential headache, working out if it was the right time to jump to inters or would it stay dry enough for slicks. Next off was Callum Ilott again, this time deeper into the gravel and bringing out a safety car. So with the field bunched up and the number 7 Toyota leading the field, we went off again for the last 2 hours. At this point, anyone could still win. The rain continued to fall and Ferrari decided to be brave and stayed out as everyone else pitted. I guess Ferrari's Formula 1 team were on strategy for this race because it was very much the wrong decision. Next off was the number 15 BMW, which had already suffered heavily at the start of the race anyway, but more yellow flags. Then Paul-Loup Chatin in the Alpine went off and yellows again. The race was getting very stop-start at this point. The track was slippery and drivers were making mistakes. With an hour left, the Toyotas went on to slicks and immediately the number 8 went to the gravel. Now we're going to see if that was the wrong decision. The last 15 minutes saw a great battle for the win between the Toyota of Kamui Kobayashi and the Porsche of Kevin Estre, but the traffic fell nicely for the Toyota, who took their first win of 2024. But it's both Porsches who finished on the podium again and are first and second in the championship. BMW dominated the GT class, taking a handy 1-2 finish, and we do it all again in a few weeks at Spa-Francorchamps. You have to check that one out, it's going to be a banger. World Rally Championship from Croatia, 1 year on from tragically losing Craig Breen. 8 Rally 1 cars sit out at the start, so as always, the top WRC 2 cars are guaranteed points. It was a battle between Thierry Neuville and Elfyn Evans. Everyone else was left in the dust, with Neuville quickest on the first day. He lost time when he knocked a tyre off the rim, but was definitely the driver to beat. But after his puncture, he and Evans finished day 1 on identical times. It could not be closer. Everyone survived until day 3, but then the rally started to take its toll. Adrien Formal has had an incredible comeback year to this point, but he hit a stage marker and wrecked his car. Art Tanak had a big moment, but the biggest scares came from Elfyn Evans, who hit a bank and spun his car, although he managed to survive. But it was more drop time to Thierry Neuville, until the Belgian had a bigger crash in the exact same place as Evans, doing some considerable damage to the Hyundai, but also surviving. And now Seb Ogier was leading the only couple of stages left. So Ogier won, with Evans and Neuville behind him. Neuville still leads the title race, but I have to say the part-time appearances of Rovanperä and Ogier are ruining what could have been a great season. I don't want part-time drivers in the top 10. I understand that it's a tactical decision from Toyota and it scores them good points, with 2 rallying superstars sharing the drive, but I want Neuville and Evans to fight for wins. 4 rounds in and Neuville has a single win, whilst Evans has 0. Ogier and Rovanperä have 1 each, as does Hyundai part-timer Lappi, and if they were doing the full season, we might be treated to a fight between rallying titans, old and new. Instead, they'll swap out and Neuville and Evans will finish the championship with maybe a couple of wins each at most. It's a shambles. Rules need to be brought in to manage this. The 2024 season was always going to be anticlimactic, but now it's just gone to the part-time dogs. IndyCar was at the wonderful Long Beach street circuit, And form driver of 2024, Felix Rosenqvist, was on pole. I say form driver, he hasn't actually won yet, but he has been really impressive in 2024. It did not work out for him here again. Teo Pourchaire was also making his IndyCar debut, hoping it would go better than his Super Formula debut from a month ago. Spoiler, a little bit, I guess. Christian Rasmussen had the only crash of the race on lap 16. Last year's Indy NXT champion ended his race parked in the Long Beach wall. After that, it was a long waiting game as strategies played out. You had the likes of Scott Dixon and Will Power doing an extra stop, or having to make the fuel last against Joseph Newgarden and Colton Herta, who were pitting later, and would have plenty of fuel to push. Despite leading early on, the strategy didn't really work out for Power, but it did for Dixon, taking his 57th IndyCar win. Colton Herta moved past Newgarden for second after the two touched, and Newgarden slowed, allowing Alex Palou to follow Herta through and get on the podium. Teo Pourchaire finished 11th on debut, and this was better than his run in Super Formula. Not outstanding, just good. Pato O'Ward had a bad race and Scott McLaughlin retired, but it's the usual bunch at the front with Newgarden leading after 2 championship rounds, with Alabama next week. The third round of the 2024 IMSA Sports Car Championship came to us from Long Beach alongside IndyCar. Only the hypercars and GTs were on track for this one, and the fact this was a hell of a race is further evidence to the fact that LMP2 and LMP3 have really had their day. An incredible battle between the leading Cadillac, Porsche and BMW was sadly interrupted by an early GT crash. Brendan Iribe lost control of his McLaren and spun into the path of Adam Adelson in a Porsche. Next up was endurance star Louis Delatraz, who parked his Acura in the wall. The racing was very close due to the safety cars, I guess, and that did lead to problems with back markers, including a traffic jam with 20 minutes left that almost guaranteed Cadillac's success in this race. But that was a disaster for Porsche and BMW. Actually, it all went a bit wild at this point as De Filippi's BMW fell to pieces. Spencer Pumpley span his Aston Martin, then Conor De Filippi crashed, but properly this time. And that meant another safety car. And so everyone was closed back up for a sub 10-minute sprint to the line. Renger van der Zande and Sebastien Ogier won for Cadillac, a very entertaining race, if a little strange, and a lot of it was lost to safety cars. Porsche lead the championship with the next round at Laguna Seca in a couple of weeks' time. Before we go any further, let's get NASCAR out of the way. The last few races have had a lot less crashes than your normal NASCAR race, so maybe it was time for the drivers to blow off some steam. The highlight of stage 1 was Denny Hamlin spinning on entry to the pits, a feature of NASCAR that you rarely see anywhere else. The first really big crash was in the final stage of the race. Chase Elliott nudged Justin Haley into Christopher Bell, and that brought out a yellow that started a series of yellows. Next up was Eric Jones, who got turned hard into the wall by Bubba Wallace, and then a mega crash to finish that took out half the field as they crossed the line. Tyler Reddick took his 6th NASCAR win with a canny move at the end, and Shane Van Gisbergen survived long enough to finish 28th on his oval debut. This was a bit exciting, I would admit. Well, the third stage was. Next weekend, we go to Dover. Supercars from Australia, but this time from New Zealand at Taupo for the first time ever. Triple Eight are dominating this series in the early stages, and it looks like the title will come down to Feeney or Brown. But reigning champion Brody Kostecki is finally back and racing at Erebus once again. He has plenty of ground to make up. Just like everywhere else in the world, it was raining and absolute chaos reigned. They should have started behind a safety car as a handful of cars went off at turn 1, whilst Cam Waters and Tim Slade didn't even make it that far. A safety car led to everyone pitting at the same time, and traffic carnage ensued. It was carnage that gave us the most memorable moments of this race, like when Chaz Mostert lost a wheel. Nothing too exciting, but at least someone other than the Triple Eight won. Andre Heimgartner takes his first win of the year, and second ever. The second race was dry, and we got a great battle between Matt Payne and Brock Feeney for the lead in the early stages. Unfortunately, it devolved to a straight fight between the Triple Eight pair. Will Brown run and extends his lead, and they were 20 seconds ahead of everyone else. Maybe we should have a chat about balance of performance, because it is definitely a 2-car series again right now. I like supercars, but I think the series would be better with shorter races. We get too stretched out. 2 40-lap races as opposed to 60 would be plenty, and some kind of balance of performance penalty for Triple Eight because it's far too easy. Will Brown pulls clear lightly in the title race. So the TCR World Tour got underway at Vallelunga, completely separate to the TCR Europe Series, also at Vallelunga, which I will cover in just a moment. I don't know what I was expecting for this TCR World Tour, but it is seemingly falling apart at the seams. The World Finals have been delayed till later in the year, and now the whole point of the series, invading the other TCR series and getting in the way, has also been stripped away slightly. Maybe it's for the best, but actually, We just had twice as many races with half as much talent on each grid. Even the production values of the coverage seemed to be a lot worse than in previous years. Race 1 got underway, and it's a shame I have to view this series so negatively, because the racing was alright. We had Norbert Mikulits in the Hyundai leading Jan Ehrlichie in the Lincoln Co, and Esteban Guerreri in the Honda fighting in the top 3. Different marquees at least looked pretty even. Mikulits took first blood. Race 2 started with a couple of safety cars. Victor Fernandez had a very fast and scary looking crash. That could have been a lot worse. Jan Ehrlichie's title hopes took a hit, much like his bonnet took a hit. He was forced to pit for repairs to the damage, and Nestor Girolami won a fairly action-packed race. Hyundai take both wins at the opening round. And now we move on to TCR Europe. Separate from its World Tour buddies, and actually, yeah, I do prefer it. I like a race series to have its own identity, and there are some good drivers in TCR Europe. That being said, there were only 12 cars at Vallelunga, and reigning champion Tom Coronel was not amongst them. The inclusion of reigning TCR South America champion Ignacio Montenegro is a very interesting one. All eyes on the Argentine as he takes his first steps to racing in Europe. Levente Lasosny brought out one of the few highlights of the first race, taking his Honda places it was not designed to go, but continuing on nonetheless. Ruben Volt and Ruben Fernandez also collided as Volt climbed his way through the field. Franco Girolami took the win, and in the second race for two Rubens, Volt and Fernandez collided again and both retired. This race was nothing special, some good battles in the midfield. Aurelien Comte won, but former champion Franco Girolami is the current pace setter. Brazilian stock cars from Interlagos, and can Felipe Massa keep up his impressive run of form? Some big crashes in race 1. Rubens Barrichello totaled his Toyota and another wheel went missing, this time from Ricardo Maurizio. Then Gabriel Casagrande just broke down. The championship leader and probably favourite was out of race 1. Cesar Ramos won ahead of Felipe Massa. Race 2 was a lot more sensible. Rubens Barrichello took his anger out on Bruno Baptista, doing to him exactly what was done to Barrichello in race 1. Entertaining race, recommend watching both of the Interlagos races. Stock car is a lot of fun. Gaetano Di Moro took the win, and the championship is still wide open here as well. Finally, let's talk about Eurocup 3. I hate that name. First time talking about this series, and its existence confuses me. Is this a step between Formula Regional and Formula 4? Possibly for those not quite good enough, or possibly without the budget to move up the single-seater ladder. The first weekend was at Spa and it was wet, which is basically the norm. The first half of the race was won under safety car and it ended early with a red flag, so it wasn't much of a race. Javier Segura was basically declared the winner, and race 2 was cancelled. So much for your first race weekend of 2024. We had about 4 minutes of racing. We try again at the Red Bull Ring in a month's time. So that was all the action from the past weekend. My race of the weekend has to be the World Endurance Championship from Imola. The World Endurance is the series giving me the most excitement right now. The hypercar class is flourishing and the racing is incredible. But there were a lot of good racing from all around the world this past weekend. So let me know your favourite in the comments below. Next weekend we have plenty more, including Formula E from Monaco, the start of British Touring Cars from Donington Park, IndyCar and Indy NXT from the Barber Motorsports Park, GB3 and British GT from Silverstone, the start of the DTM at Oschersleben, Euro Formula with its grid of like 5 cars at Portimao, and NASCAR from Dover. So make sure you don't miss that or any of the other motorsport content going up here at Frontrunner Motorsport by subscribing to the channel. Thank you very much for watching and have a good one.